Hello and welcome to Elements of Design, a podcast where I interview design leaders, mentors, influencers, and evangelists and talk to them about their design journey, how to be a better designer, and the future of design in India. I'm your host, Manav Madan, a UX designer based out of New Delhi, India. My guest today is Nitish Khagwal. Nitish is a full stack product designer at Webcool. He's a creator of libraries like Micron.js and Vivid.js. He's also the creator of a plugin called CoolHue and a product called UXM. He's a 3 times Invision Studio smasher. He loves to make pixel dance and he is a founder of Webcool Design Community. In this episode, he talks about the importance of having a mentor and why side projects are important in a designer's career and growth. So let's welcome Nitish to the show. So Nitish, welcome to Layers of Design.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here, and I really appreciate your effort for inviting.
Yeah, thanks for accepting the invitation because you are the first guest of this podcast, and I am doing this for the very first time. So thanks to you. So my first question to you, Nitish, is what does 3 times Vision Studio Basher actually mean? What is that?
Like you know what? There was a tool called Invision Studio. It was
Yeah.
quite new, so I just watched a bit of tutorials on YouTube, and it fascinated me a bit. And I thought, let's explore this tool out.
Okay.
So I tried eventually creating one interaction every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a team behind Invision Studio. Like we
Mm-hmm.
have got amazing Charles Pattinson, we have got Pablo Stanley, we have got
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Fabre.
Mm-hmm.
So what the people do every other week, they just pick one design and they tweet it as like this one is the best
Okay.
for this week. So
Okay.
basically, and they call that stuff smasher of the week. So I
Okay.
have got 3 picks out of 5, maybe. So that's that the
So
stuff.
are they on Dribble? Are they available on Dribble?
Yeah, each and every shot is available on the dribble. You can just go and check. That
So
goes like
so
a self promotion
so you just send me over the links and we'll put it in the show notes. You have created libraries like Vivid.js and Micron.js, right? And you are also a designer. You also do interaction design. You also do illustration work. Uh, so are you a design unicorn? Because it surely feels like that.
You can probably say that, but you know what? I personally love doing interactions and product design much. And illustration is like a hobby, but I'm not very good at it, but I love
Mhm.
to do it. So that's the
Okay.
stuff. And
Okay.
as far as the unicorn word is considered, like I do a lot of things, but I never tend to be a unicorn. I rather
Okay.
prefer to have a specialization over one thing and, then
Mhm.
trying and iterating over it again and again to excel. So I never try to be a unicorn, and I will not say I'm a unicorn too, but yeah, I have a lot of weapons in my quiver.
Sure. So, one of the things that I also used to face when I was starting design was when you get into design, especially UX design, there are several branches of user experience design, like information architecture in product design. Then you have your interaction design, then you have content strategy, many, many like that. And it is
So
always recommended that you should always specialize in one. You must have heard of the Chris Doe's T model, where he says you go 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep. So specialize in one thing, but have a set of tools to work with.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, at what point do you realize that, this is something that you have to go with, or this is a skill that you have to select and go a mile deep with?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I work on set of product design projects,
Mm-hmm.
and a product design is much like of a versatile role. You have a set of things like you need to keep an eye on the illustrations, you need to keep an eye on the iconography, you need to keep an eye
Mm-hmm.
on even sometimes the code structures if
Mm-hmm.
you are using libraries like Lottie or something relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what I do is I try to stick with the basics, like what exactly is the core, what is needed, like on the top of every other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, then I just look forward, like if there is some other assets which are required, and
Mm-hmm.
if I'm capable enough of learning them and then excelling and making things to the professional level, so I just try to do them like by myself. And if I think like I'm not able to do that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that's not my zone, then I
Mm-hmm.
just look forward for something else to do it.
Okay.
And probably the best example of this thing will be like I use Invision Studio for the interactions, but you know what, still you cannot give like those interactions to your developer because you need some file format like we have Lottie. So I just asked one fellow at my place to create the similar interaction in After Effects, and he just do that because I'm not very good at After Effects. I know the tool, but you know what, I'm not proficient about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I just do it. Like if I'm able, if I can do it with like full proficiency, so I'll go by myself, I'll learn.
Mm-hmm.
I will learn like that a set, and I will try to deliver it out. Like if I think it will take a long while and it has a long learning curve, then I just ask some other fellow who is good at that particular stuff
Hmm.
as compared. The most overrated thing which I find these days is design is critical. Actually, it is not. Design is easy.
Okay.
Like every other person is saying design is so critical. You need to be like, you need to think about this stuff, you need to think about that, you need to talk about cognitive biases, you need to talk about heuristics. Actually, it's not like that. If all those things can lead to a better design, then there is no meaning of the testing and all those iteration processes. So I
Okay.
think this thing is particularly quite overrated. And you know what, all the freshers or the designers who are just starting out, it is becoming very hectic for those because the people think, okay, I need to learn every other thing which is out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this thing is like very much overrated and it shouldn't be there. Like design is easy. I always try to make look design easy. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can just make some header, some footer, and write some text in between. It's a design. It will work.
Mm-hmm.
How it will exactly work? That's the question which arises later, and that's what we call a process of iteration, and we get perfection later. So that's the thing. And the second thing, which you have asked,
The most
what
underrated thing.
exactly the most underrated thing about design? The designers itself. The designers themselves are the most underrated thing, I think.
Okay. What makes you say that actually? That's an interesting thing
Actually,
to
there
say.
are there are there are like a lot of reasons because
Okay.
I've seen this industry from like last 7 to 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with world class engineers. I have worked with world class sales executives,
Mm-hmm.
but not world class designers. What could be the reason?
Mm-hmm.
What could be the reason? Because I hardly find a few people who are actually very much excelled about the design skill.
Okay.
So even when we come to the corporate world, even still I need to get people convinced that design do play a role. So a lot of time people just think, okay, let's do this stuff and put it somewhere and let's get the MVP out. And even they don't care about most of the time about the design. Like that's how I have perceived the world. I'm not saying in general at every other place that thing would have been happening, but for me, I have just observed that thing. I think like designers need more attention. However,
Okay.
it's quite contradictory.
Mm.
Maybe like people will say a designer must have more convincing power to tell the stakeholders and the developers that this thing should be like into the consideration. For example, if there is a drop shadow on some card,
Mm.
how somebody can convince like it's needed, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually it gets ignored.
Okay.
So I think designer need to have some sort of more attentive behavior. Like we should listen to them. What I think, like what I have observed in like previous years.
Okay. You
So
said design is actually not critical. Design is easy,
yeah,
right?
design is easy. Yeah.
Design is easy, but a lot of people, everyone says that you need to learn a lot of things to create a design, right? You need to be aware of cognitive biases. You need to be aware of these certain UX laws, right? And this is what
So
is actually happening on the Instagram design community. So ultimately, you get a lot of information overwhelmed as you go through this content. So how can you make something easy when there is a lot of information out there which is easily accessible to you?
the thing is like what I have seen. Even I'll come on some other aspect as well for this question. Like
Okay.
there is a lot of content and there is a lot of non-relevant content. For
Hmm.
example, if I'm a product designer, I need to learn about the heuristics. But if there is some sort of illustration artist, why he need to learn about the heuristics?
Hmm.
But still what's happening, like there's a lot of stuff, there are a lot of motivation stuff, like you should learn these things, You should learn that thing. And what's actually happening end of the day, like it's a person who is putting out something for some reason, and there are people who lack the knowledge at the core, and they think like this is something like which is needed, I should go and learn. So it is totally up to a person, like how he perceive to the things. Like if
Okay.
there is a fellow who's quite new in the design, he definitely need to get a mentor, or he definitely need to go for a formal education. If there is a person, if somebody says like I just come from a non design background, and I come from a dev background, and now I want to be a designer. So trust me, if you are just going to follow those Instagram posts, it's not going to help. For sure, you need to get some mentor. You need to get someone who can actually teach you over the stuff, like what's exactly needed for a stuff. There are people who says like a lot of time, like I want to be a UX designer, and I often ask them like, what will be your role? Like what do you love the most? Then he says like, I like creating interfaces. If you like creating interfaces, why you want to be a UX designer? You need to be a UI designer end of the day. There are a lot of fresh designers with whom I have a talk. I ask like, why you want to get into design? Then they say, I want to get into design because I'm very good at sketching, because I have a creative visualization. If you have a creative visualization, why you want to get into UI UX? You should look out for the positions as art director, right? So people need to understand like what exactly each and every other role really means. Like even there are hardly I've seen a people who can just differentiate what's the difference between UX research and UX design.
Okay.
And now what will happen eventually if you are just building your skill set on user research, however you want to be a UX designer? So I hope it will be like you are just collecting a lot of information and you are just putting it into the shelf, and you are not going to utilize it at any point of the time. So for sure, any other person who is just starting into design, he definitely need to understand like what he exactly want to do, and according to that he should prepare some sort of a roadmap, like these are the skill sets which are needed and I need to learn them, and then he need to follow some people under the same niche. So that's my take on this stuff.
According to what you have said, it feels like there is a lack of design awareness. So, what is important first? Is design awareness important or design education important?
I think both are important. And
Okay.
even if you will just see in India, particularly in India, in last 5 years, design have just popped up. Like people are now really care about like, okay, we need designers. Before 5 years, it was hardly a factor. People were like, okay, a developer is going to do that by himself, right? And if there would have been few designers, the ratio would have been like 30s to 1. Like people used to have 30 developers and one designer, but now fairly you will see like 10 is to 1 is the ratio at this particular stage, right? So for sure, design education is something which needs to be there at very good standards, which I hardly find anywhere. It's quite contradictory to say, but I have already been to a set of universities and colleges, and what I have seen, that people are teaching the tools. They are not teaching the design.
Okay.
I can learn a tool on some online YouTube channels, but what exactly I need to learn is like, what are the design principles? Like how exactly industrial design works. So obviously, design education needs some sort of a uplift for sure. And as far as design awareness is considered, it is needed, because
Okay.
people need to learn like how exactly design work in the practical world rather than using pen tool on the blank canvas.
Yeah. So you also mentioned that every one should also have a mentor, but a mentor is very hard to find, especially a good one. And what I believe, what I feel is that it's as difficult to find a good mentor as it is to find a good designer. So when there are not too many good designers, then there are not too many design mentors.
True. The thing is, you necessarily don't need a mentor from your local town. Even the remote will work. Like
Okay.
I just ask a lot of questions to Miriam Isaac, and she obviously replies every other time. So she's mentoring me like over a set of the things. I even messaged a lot of people, but there are few like who turns back, and they turns back like really well. They'll
Okay.
answer you like even your silly questions. So
Okay.
it's not about finding in your local community
Okay.
particularly. It's about, you can just find them like on YouTube. There are people on YouTube You can just go, you can tweet them, and you can just connect with them, and they'll be like happy to assist you back,
Mhm.
because it's always a give and take. It's not
Mhm.
like they are not getting any benefit out of it. For sure they're also getting benefit out of it. So it's not like this you just need to connect with the people in the local town only. Maybe I just think like if I see some awesome design on Dribble and I'm not able to figure it out like how I can make it, and if it is relevant, if I'll
Mhm.
just go to the person's profile, either maybe I'll be able to connect with him on Twitter or maybe Instagram or maybe LinkedIn, and then I can just ask questions. So
Mhm.
for sure you can find a mentor. They are always there around you.
What makes a good mentor, and then what makes a good student?
I think what makes a good student, first I'll just share my thoughts on that. Like if I just say something to somebody, they should just listen me. They
Mhm.
should just try it. And
Mhm.
once they try it, they should come back to me. But what in general happens, there are people, they get motivated by some speeches, and
Mhm.
then they ask some questions, then they do some stuff for 2 days, and after third day they just go blank.
Mhm.
So for a good student, or if I'm mentoring someone, what I expect out of them is like if I've said something, just give it a try. I could be wrong, but just give it a try creating something out of it. And if you think like whatever I have said, it's not working for you, you should just share it back with me, and for sure we'll be able to figure out something better. And
Mhm.
as far as being a good mentor is considered, you need to understand what needed to be feeded at what point of time. You don't need to give everything at one day. You just need to answer like what they people are asking. Like there is one girl from Albania, and she has been like continuously asking me questions on Instagram, like every other day. And what she asked, like she asked things like what should be the tab bar size, what should be the icon size on iOS, what should be the size of icons on Android, what is the difference between Android and iOS pattern. So that's how it works. If one day I'll just sit and tell her everything, go to material design and see every other space, it may haunt her. So I think you just need to feed the information what they people are looking for, because everybody has their own learning curve and they are trying their best to learn. And
Mhm.
we shouldn't put so much pressure on them, like you need to learn heuristics, you need to learn UX bias, you need to learn like XD, you need to learn Figma, you need to learn interaction design. That's not the way. Like just
Mhm.
answer them like what exactly they are looking out for.
Mhm. But wouldn't that make them lazy? I mean, if you ask little questions like, what should be the size of a tab bar, which are
But the thing is,
already.
Manav, but the thing is like they are already trying it out now.
Mhm.
But what if I just say, okay, let's design a full-fledged app? That's an assignment. I hope that gets more boring. Like it
Mhm.
eventually happened with me in the college days. Like they gave me like a logo design. You need to design a logo for that form and do a packaging thing. I hardly
Mhm.
had some interest. I just did that thing for the sake of just getting the project away. Okay, it's done.
Mhm. What are the three qualities that are deal breaker? I mean, you have to have them in order to be a
Like
designer.
first, yeah, sure. I should answer to this. You should have the ability to take the criticism,
Okay.
and you need to know like how to you should have the ability to differentiate between the criticism and even taking the feedbacks, and you should be able to distinguish like what's the difference between bad feedback and constructive feedback.
Hmm.
And you need to be like charged and motivated about that thing. Like if somebody is putting a feedback, you need to know like what kind of a feedback she is putting. If somebody is saying like that design is not working, so I really don't give a damn, because maybe according to them it's not working, but for me it's
Okay.
working. And second thing is like if somebody says that design is not working because your sky blue is not visible on yellow, that makes a sense, and then I'll just go for some contrast check ratios.
Mhm.
Right, so I just take like this is the very first thing. Like you should take the criticism, you should listen to the people. Second thing is like you should observe a lot. Like whatever kind of a designer you are, even if you are an illustrator, even if you are a UI designer, you are a product guy, you should
Mhm.
observe a lot. Maybe you can
Okay.
observe at Instagram, maybe you can observe at Dribble, maybe you can look out at Behance. Like you should just see the work of the people who are quite relevant and they are successful in your field. And for sure there are always a few who are already like well established and they are doing phenomenal job. So you
Mhm.
should go and learn from their skill set, observe them like how they are doing. And the third one which I'll say is you need to make it rather than reading a lot. You shouldn't read a lot because you need time to draw. For example, if I read 8 hours every other day, how many hours I can actually draw something or make something. So my preference will be, you should practice more. You should
Mm.
do more with your mouse rather than just scrolling and reading gigs of the data, collecting it for no reason. You may sound quite studious, you may sound like curious and like I'm a person who knows all those things. Maybe for sure, we can definitely say he'll be like he'll be like jack of all trades but master of none, because he's reading out every other thing but he's not practicing any of the things. So
Mm-hmm.
you should at least choose something which is very much relevant to you, and you should go like 20% of reading and 80% of doing. So
Okay.
that's my take on this stuff.
So how does one identify the difference between the correct information and the incorrect information? Because for a
Yeah, I
new
mean,
person, that I mean, anything that you will tell me is correct to me unless I put my effort into it.
just an example, if I just see some of the posts,
Mm-hmm.
and just let's talk about cognitive bias only, and there
Okay.
is something like cognitive bias, and I
Mm-hmm.
just scrolled and came to know about a few stuff like bandwagon effect, anchoring and priming,
Mm-hmm.
and something is written over there.
Okay.
So either it will fascinate me, either it will not fascinate me. If it
Mm-hmm.
didn't fascinate me, it's hardly matters. But if
Mm-hmm.
it did fascinate me, what I will do is I will make some notes, and for sure I will go further on internet and I will look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get your information validated.
Okay.
So whatever has been written over there, and once I Google and read a blog around it, for sure I'll just validate it, like whatever has been written over there, like it's good or it's like whatever. But how I take about Instagram stuff is, like there is a lot of micro copies, that there are a lot of words, there are a lot of glossary and terms that I already don't know. But I just came to know, like, okay, this thing is also there in design. So I just make a note if I'm interested, and then I just go for a deep research out of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
the term I'm saying right now, cognitive bias, I've eventually seen some post on Instagram itself, and then I got a kick. Like this thing is something which needs some attention. And trust me, like I'm reading a lot about cognitive bias. Like there are 200 cognitive biases, and I'm reading a lot about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helps, like in UX design process. So
Okay.
that's my way, like how I do it.
Okay. Now I have some rapid fire questions for you. Just don't give a thought. Just whatever comes to your mind first. Okay. Ready?
Okay,
Yeah. Dribble or
ready.
Behance?
Dribble.
Favorite typeface?
Montserrat.
Apple or Android?
Apple, obviously.
Favorite emoji?
That slide smile one.
Sorry, the sly smile.
Yeah.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
T.
Favorite app?
There are like plenty, but
One. Favorite app? One.
it's hard to choose, man. It's hard to choose.
No, man. No, no, no,
Snapchat,
no, no.
maybe Snapchat.
Snapchat. Code pen or
Yeah,
JS Fiddle?
code pen.
Okay, cool. So, okay. So, Nitish, tell me about your design journey. How did you end up becoming a designer?
Um, like it eventually happened, like it happens with every other designer in the world. Like I
Okay.
borrowed a compact disc from my friend. It had Photoshop. I
Mm-hmm.
installed it, played around a bit. Then eventually we went to some trip. We came back, and I used to Photoshop some photographs. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the thing. Like I thought like this thing is good. I think it was fascinating, more like a fascinating. And later in 2010, I created some poster for my school,
Mm-hmm.
uh, some sort of poster for some event for my school. I exactly don't
Mm-hmm.
remember what exactly it was, but it made me some click. Like, what if I just get paid out of it?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thought. Then in when I came in 12th class, I thought like I should go and learn Photoshop fully. Like I need to learn this tool, like so that I can be more professional, and not for the sake of any money, not for the sake of anything else, just for the sake of like I like it. I want to do more out of it. And I looked out for learning the Photoshop, but eventually there was no one from whom I can actually learn the Photoshop. There were actually few photographers, but that wasn't my choice. I didn't prefer them. I don't know why I didn't prefer them, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, let's find some professional. But I belong to Meerut, so I just tried my best to get someone who can teach me Photoshop. So I didn't find anyone there. Then there was a fellow, and I met him and thought that he knows Photoshop and he will teach me. But he
Mm-hmm.
eventually said, "Ki, nahi, nahi, I can teach you JavaScript and PHP." So I said, okay, ठीक है, कुछ नहीं से कुछ सही है. So I just said, okay, let's go for PHP. So I learned PHP in 2011, and that was the perfect decision I have ever made. At that point of time, I came to know like how exactly this website stuff works, how exactly internet works, and at the same year I've just passed out. So I thought like let's get into this because I love Photoshop already. I do like sketching. I do like the creative stuff. So I thought, okay, let's get into it. Then I had full-time graduation in design, and even after even just after 6 months, I started as intern. I started an internship with NOC in the Noida itself. Then for some 6 months, I didn't work anywhere, and then I went to a full-time work at a place in the night shift for 1 year, and after that, I came at Webtoon, and now it's like 6 years.
Okay. So,
So that's how
when you started design 6 years, 8 years ago, and versus today, how have you seen design evolve?
in the very early days it was much about putting the things on the place, like you need a button. But now if you need a button, there are a lot of things that you need to care about, like what will be the performance stuff. Are you meeting the contrast ratio? Is the button ghost or is the button rounded? So design is now more peculiar. Design is more about, it's just not about the taste, even it's about the diversity and more about the disciplines and the verticals. So it now design needs to be like more of it's like more of an engaging tool maybe for the people, because if you just go to laid back Nokia or the Symbians, they used to have like no design at all. But at this stage, like design is like, I think design is something, that's why the people are buying out the Android phones. Maybe that's the reason why people are buying the iPhones. And like design is the primary asset like which you need or which you see or get fascinated. I'm just not talking about the digital design, I'm talking about even the industrial or the product design itself. So design has truly evolved, and now it has to do uh, a lot as compared to like what it did 6 years back.
Okay. You were learning Photoshop, and then you found someone who you thought could be your mentor, but he told you that he knows coding rather than, he could teach you to how to code rather than design. I mean, how was that decision for you at that point of time?
Like it was like, okay, I don't have a choice. The thing was like I didn't have a choice. I thought, okay, let's learn this stuff, because it was like a long vacation after 12th exam in India,
Okay.
like we have a vacation for around 3-4 months. They give you a full time, like plan your career, whatever you want to do. You can just sit and relax and think. So I thought, okay, I'll be just, it was just like 1 or 2 hours class. I just need to go, and then so I thought, okay, it will be of some use. Okay, let's try learning it. And as far as like I was quite depressed, like I was not able to find anybody who can teach me Photoshop. And trust me, that's the reason why I go for a lot of mentorship sessions these days. Because even in when I was in my college days, I there's a difference between a work and a smart work. I always wanted to do the smart work, but I was not able to find what's the way to do the smart work. I was doing the hard work, but not the smart work. And the true reason behind is because I was not able to find the people who were actually in the industry, who can actually teach me like this is the stuff which you should work upon. Like I was creating some nonsense website designs which had no grid systems, which and they were not responsive. They were like just another thing. So obviously you need some person like who's already doing it, maybe not a mentor, maybe a friend like who's already doing it and well established and know how exactly things work. So that was like quite heartbreaking. Obviously at that time, like I was not able to find anybody, and even not at that time, even like for 2-3 years, unless I didn't know about the YouTube community and I had internet in my hand. So
Since you've created like a lot of side projects also, right? What is the role of a side project in a designer's journey and career?
it has a big role actually. The thing is like if you want to develop a skill, you surely need to work around it. And unless you don't go professional, you don't know how exactly that skill needs to be evolved and what needs to be the level of the evolution of that skill. So for example, if I talk about Coolhu, it is if you'll just go to the GitHub and check its source code laid back in 2017, uh, I'm not sure whether it was 2017 or 2016. If you'll just go, you'll see it was just a normal HTML file. That is it. So my take was I wanted to learn Framer. So Framer
Okay.
is Core.js and React. So I just like interaction design really fascinated me from like very early time. I always wanted to do interactions. So I was like more into Framer. I want to learn JavaScript because I want to learn Framer. So I started eventually learning JavaScript. So I wanted to do something with the JavaScript, but at my current role, I'm a product designer. I need to do things with the Photoshop or Sketch more rather than with the code. So how I will be able to learn it? There's no other way. So I thought, okay, let's try creating something. So there was one of my product called UVdesk. It was a help desk system for enterprises. So I created a gradient swatch for that product, and Coolio is exactly the same swatch. I just put it on the like GitHub, and I shared its link on some uh, designer news site, and maybe HN I have shared, and I've just mailed a set of people to like, this is something what I have created. Just see and tell me like, does it has any value?
So, all right, Nitish, that was all.
And thank you for inviting me to.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Elements of Design. Links to everything mentioned in the episode will be available in the show notes below. To listen to our previous episode, search for Elements of Design in your favorite podcast app and make sure you hit subscribe. If you like the episode or the podcast, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or any podcast app that you're listening to. It will help the show gets discovered and it would mean a world to me. If you have any feedback, suggestion, or if you just want to say hi, please reach out to me on Instagram at UXANDMORE. That's UX and more, one word. And with that, I'll take a leave. Hope to see you in the next episode. And remember, work hard and be nice to people. Jinkui.